The college football overlords have spoken once more. And once again, they're leaving an interesting path open that will completely debunk everything people have been saying that this is why we need to expand. It will be debunking everything. So, let's just dive right on into the bracket that the College Football Committee has come out in this edition. So, moving into that, we got Oregon, number 1 seed, rightfully earned. They are still undefeated, and I mean they've earned it. Texas, number 2, 1 loss to Georgia at home. They kind of got boat raced. So, but, you know, I guess it's better to back into number 2 than win into number 5. But nonetheless, then we got Miami number 3, Boise number 4, which is a that's a little bit of a shocker. Boise, the presumptive Mountain West champions, getting the first round bye over the Big 12 champion. That now sits at number 12 and will have to go on the road to play Ohio State if the season ended today. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more jockeying for position. This is not going to be the final standings. But it is showing right off the cuff how much power that the committee still has. Because it's Ohio State's tough enough at home, on the road, neutral site. They're tough enough. But you're going from having to play them in Columbus as opposed to a first round bye and then play Ohio State, which, again, Ohio State is a tough team to play regardless of the circumstances. But it is a little bit more manageable when you don't have to play that extra game. So, right off the cuff, we are seeing the absolute importance of winning a conference. Which, and then on the BYU side, that's a severe punishment for losing at home. And I am one of those that I do agree with severe punishment if you lose at home like they did. But, like, oh my goodness, what a punishment. But anyway, and then the next round you have Alabama, Notre Dame, which that is certainly going to change one way or another before the end of this, because Notre Dame, they're going to be playing Army. And, well, if you gotta go watch my video from previous day, go watch that. I got my predictions there. And it ain't good for Notre Dame. Then you have Georgia having to go up to Happy Valley and play Penn State. That is actually a nightmare scenario for Georgia, especially with it being in December. The weather is colder. And Georgia has absolutely no experience in cold weather. I can promise you that. At least not playing in it. And especially as cold as it could get in December. I know how cold it gets, because I'm right next door in the great state of Ohio. And then you have Ole Miss and Indiana, and obviously that's gonna change. So You have an unbeaten Indiana as the 7th seed behind Penn State, who got smacked at home, Ohio State, who got beat by Oregon on the road, but Indiana still sits undefeated. And granted, they do get a home game in this scenario against Ole Miss, and Indiana's going to be able to prove that they deserve to have that 5 seed, potentially even 1, should they pull off another upset in Indianapolis. So, the road is directly in front of them there. And then, and it's the same situation for Ole Miss as Georgia. They're going to have to go on the road to a colder environment, something that these guys do not have experience in doing. And Ole Miss, they got it. They're more of an air raid team. Now I think they can run the ball. I think they'll be able to run the ball. So it won't be as damaging as it will for Georgia, who cannot run the ball to save their lives. But and I wouldn't say it's a nightmare scenario for Ole Miss necessarily. Not as bad as for Georgia, but it is still not the greatest environment. And I will add, Alabama's the same way, but they can run the ball. So that's not a concern. Alabama can run the ball. But so there's there's definitely as my good friend Gabriel from Curious Sports Media Pulse Sports Media, something along those lines. I'll link his X down below. But yeah, his there's a lot of football left to be played, especially between Indiana and Ohio State. Now, let's move on to the rest of the rankings, shall we? And we got a nice little side-by-side of the rankings. Oh, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Alabama. And then we start getting a little crazy. You got Miami at number 8. So, you're telling me that Miami, on the field, would beat Ole Miss, Georgia, and Tennessee? Right. Or are you just kind of defaulting and putting them as the lower one-loss teams of the upper echelon of college football? Because the College Football Committee doesn't exactly have a way to think for themselves when it comes to action on the field. Because I can tell you, Miami is not beating Ole Miss. They're not beating Georgia. They're not beating Tennessee. And I even question whether they would be able to beat Boise, SMU, or BYU. And and then on top of all of that, if I could direct your attention a little bit lower in the standings, you have Army 9-0 going to the conference championship game. Now, if they beat Notre Dame, will they get high enough to get into the playoff? I sure hope so. But again, that's no guarantee. So, if Army is able to beat Notre Dame this weekend, you have to put Army up above Boise State, BYU, and SMU. You have to. Army has the best win on the schedule. They are undefeated. I mean, what else would be needed? And they also have, I think they also have another top 25 matchup in the AAC championship with Tulane. I'm going to double check because I think they're in the AAC. Yeah, they are in the AAC. So it's there. The opportunity is there. And should Army finish the job and go undefeated, there is absolutely no reason to leave them out. And with the way that this is headed, I don't think they do. I don't think they get left out if they go undefeated. Now, you have the jockeying for position with Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Tennessee, obviously, they need miracle work. They need a Egg Bowl upset, a clean old-fashioned hate upset, and then they'll get in. And they need both. Because Boise's going to be ahead of them. Army may very well jump up ahead of them because Army would have the best win between Army and Tennessee. Well, maybe. No, Tennessee has Alabama. Never mind. Scratch that. But they are undefeated nonetheless. They didn't get smacked by another team like Georgia smacked Tennessee. So, and then you have Texas A&M looming in the catbird seat for the SEC title game. And they are nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found in this ranking. Do you see them? I don't see them. I mean, good Lord. What does an Aggie have to do to get a little respect around here? Jesus. And I even forgot about them. Which might honestly be why. But, I mean, I get that they have 2 losses. But they're still sitting directly onto the catbird seat to go to the SEC championship game. Because they only have 1 loss in the conference. And if I'm not mistaken, they're the only team in the SEC that can claim that standings. I understand it's a little wonky. Give me a second. That's Conference USA, Mountain, SEC. Yep. Okay, Texas has 1 loss. I keep forgetting about Texas. But, yeah. Texas and Texas A&M are in the catbird seat. And it looks like Georgia's actually sitting 3rd and has the tiebreaker among everybody. Although if Tennessee loses, then I think the tiebreaker goes to, I believe, Alabama or Ole Miss. But as long as Tennessee stays winning, or gets back to their winning ways, I should say, then they'll be all right. Then Georgia will be all right, which is incredibly weird to be forced into rooting for Tennessee to keep those tiebreakers intact so he can go to the SEC championship game. And then potentially get the first round, but and then get the first round bye, because I have no fear of Texas. Texas, I do not fear. As a fan of Georgia, I'll put it this way: as a fan of Georgia, I have no fear of Texas and Ohio State. Let's bring back the thing up. So if Georgia plays on a neutral site or at home, I have no fear Well, in Miami's case, it'd be either in Georgia or in Miami or neutral site. Don't matter. But and Notre Dame for that matter, because I don't think Notre Dame's that good either. But as a fan of Georgia, I have no fear of Texas, Miami, Oregon, Boise, Indiana, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, BYU. I have no fear of them in a neutral site or at home. The only reason I have serious concerns about Penn State in Happy Valley is because of the cold weather and the poor running game. That makes me fearful of Penn State and a potential Ohio State matchup in Columbus. So, I guess, but yeah, I would definitely have A&M a lot higher. But you know, A&M and Army are kind of in the same boat. Army should be in that boat anyway, but they control their own destiny. They go out and win. They go out, take care of business. They'll be in the playoff. Georgia, Alabama. Well, Alabama, they control their own destiny. Georgia, that's a different question. Ole Miss, I think they control their own destiny. But if Georgia gets, if Georgia ends up, if Tennessee ends up losing, that could truly, really hurt Georgia by not getting that final checkmark victory in an SEC championship game. Because there is nobody left on the schedule for Georgia. It is UMass and Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech, I'm not gonna lie, I'm concerned because Georgia Tech's, they're a tough team to put away. And in Georgia, they're not melting that clock. They're not beating you up. They're trying to beat you over the top. They're trying to beat you through the air. And that is a very dangerous proposition when you play against anybody in Division I football when you struggle to run the ball like Georgia has. So, well, hopefully a lot of questions will be answered this weekend and next weekend. So here's to hoping that things go well for them, my good old Bulldogs. And here's to hoping that your team wins too. Unless they play Georgia, then, then I hope nothing but the worst for you. We'll see you next time on Patriot Dylan.